That might be the issue. I need to turn on my audio. That was an operator error on my part. Let me just reconnect here and make sure that's working good. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Looking forward to today's webinar. I'm going to be flying semi-solo today. April's a little bit under the weather. She's in the control room as she's a real trooper in the control room, but she's not going to be on air, so it's just me and my lovely face here today. So I hope everybody's doing really well. I'm really looking forward to today's webinar. I've been working on this concept for a really long time, the concept of Moneyball Webinars. So if you're in the room today, we're going to be talking about some of the nitty gritty of what makes webinars work for us, how profitable they can be, and set some reasonable expectations. See if we can overcome some of the hype that happens around the world of webinars. Let's have a look at who we got. We got people from Michael from Dublin and Chuck from McCollinsburg, Pennsylvania, it looks like. Catonsville, Maryland is Ann. Welcome aboard. Okotoks, Canada. Mike, welcome from Okotoks. Spring should be coming to Okotoks soon. John from Durham, England. Hello there to you as well. Joyce from Fort Lauderdale. Oh, McKenna, aloha from Hawaii. That's nice. Kim in Abbotsford, just down the road from me. Rosero in Mexico. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And it's just flying through. Skookumchuck. Jim from Skookumchuck. For those of you who don't know, Skookumchuck means big water. It's the word for the ocean. Good. I completely digressed. Wow, it's been a busy couple of weeks for us here at dottotech. Those of you that have been kind of following the YouTube channel know that we've really upped our publishing game on YouTube. We've been publishing a lot more videos, and one of the things we've been publishing is a vlog. And so I've been just it's been a real voyage of discovery for me, learning about doing the vlog. So I feel like everything feels like it's kind of happening in fast order, and webinars are on top of us, and then more vlogs and more videos. We're just kind of getting into the production cycle, but it's coming along really well. Yesterday's vlog, if you caught it, or if you haven't, is about my beard. I also talk about Facebook privacy, which, by the way, just as an aside to let everybody know what's coming up over the next couple of weeks, is we're going to be a little bit disjointed here on Webinar Wednesday for the next month or so. So here is the reason. Next week, I have a speaking engagement, so I'm not going to be doing Webinar Wednesday. We're going to take a week off. Then we've got back-to-back weeks where we'll be on, and we're going to be covering Facebook privacy, and we're going to be talking about the Google ecosystem, all of the things, pulling all of the different pieces of Google together and what you get and what you benefit from the Google ecosystem. It's kind of funny, those being back-to-back, dealing about online privacy and then dealing with the Google ecosystem, which, of course, is an assault to our privacy if we stop and think about it. Then I'm taking a week, at least 1 week off, perhaps two, because I'm getting married. So that is a priority. When we come back, I'm going to talk about weddings planning and online planning of events, because that's been a real experience using some of these wedding planning tools. And when I say an experience, I'm not saying an experience in a positive way. I have not been really happy with any of these online tools that I'm using to help organize our guest list and all of the different aspects of our wedding. Thank you for the congratulations. But I've not been at all happy with these tools. They are confusing, even to somebody like me who really kind of gets online tools. They're really confusing. And I guess it's because they have to make money. They nickel and dime you in a million different areas, which drives me crazy whenever that happens. But bottom line is, we're going to be talking about it. So if you're planning on getting married, or actually planning any online event, parties, reunions, that sort of stuff, we're going to be talking about some of those tools. Yeah, Karen saying, tell me about it. Her daughter just got engaged. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what tool you're using, Karen, or what they've chosen to use. But I am just, it's been, yeah. It's who's a lucky girl? You're making an assumption. It's Shannon. And if you watch our videos on your YouTube channel, you see Shannon. Shannon stars in the video where we had to collect, in one of our new vlogs where we had to collect Farley's pee. So you can all meet Shannon should you want to meet Shannon. She's a charming one. She's lovely. And it's interesting, my audit feed is not getting the video right now. So I'm experiencing the same sort of problems as you folks might experience occasionally. So I'm going to reload. Oh, there it is. There it is. Now it's working just fine. All right. This is what we're going to do. Yes, thank you very much for the best wishes. We will. It's going to be a much bigger wedding than I thought. I thought we were going to have like a tiny little wedding. There's going to be like 140 people there, and then we're doing the after party where we're inviting people that don't necessarily need to come to the wedding itself. So it's going to be a big event. It's going to be it's way more work than I wanted. But now we're looking at it. I'm trying to really have a really positive attitude as a party. But geez, the wedding planning people make it hard, because every time you turn around, it's like, sure, we can do that, and more money. And I'm trying not to have that bad attitude. So don't tell Shannon I got the bad attitude. Don't share it. Good. Yes. And of course, also Farley my dog has a torn ACL. So he's going in for surgery soon. He just lifted up his head. He doesn't really understand, I don't think yet, but it's not going to be fun for Farley for the next couple of months as we go through that. So there we go. April is having trouble getting in as a moderator. Try again. You may be in the wrong webinar. There we go. Sorry about that. That's April. That's me talking to April in Slack because she's just in the control room. So hopefully that's all good. All right. So if anybody's having any issues, just reconnect or reload your browser and you should be fine. All right. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get into the topic. Hopefully everything is now load balanced and we're getting going. We are going to be talking about a concept called Moneyball Webinars. And where this grew out of was partially my frustration with the webinar industry, people telling you that you can make all this X number of dollars in how successful people can be with webinars. And I believe webinars are the best tool for building community. I mean, obviously we are totally committed to webinars here on dottotech, delivering a live webinar each and every week as we do. But I want you to have reasonable expectations of what a webinar can do for you, how much money it can make, and the numbers that I've experienced and that my peers have experienced are not necessarily what is always presented to us. So I wanted a reasonable expectation. B, there are things you can do in webinars that really make sense, that really can make a big difference in success. And we've been working on learning those things here as we've done Webinar Wednesday. And I think we figured out a lot of things, not necessarily all about sales, but about having a successful webinar, which if you are selling translates into sales. So I wanted to share that. The third thing I want to cover today is we're about to launch our webinar course, again, Winning at Webinars. And so we wanted to make sure that we celebrate it and get it off to a rousing start. And this project that I've been working on for so long is just the sort of thing to get people thinking about whether or not webinars are going to work for them. And if they are going to work for them, if it's a worthwhile investment for them to sign up for our course. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So I am going to jump into the video part. We have about 21 minutes of video today called Moneyball Webinars. Those of you who are fans of the movie Moneyball, yes, we're riffing off the movie. Watch the video, and I'm looking forward to the questions. I'll be in chat through the whole time as we go along. On the other side, we'll fill you in on the upcoming course, the offer we have for the course, and answer questions and get into a really, I hope, energetic discussion about ways to make money using webinars. So here we go with Moneyball Webinars. All right, this is actually a bit of a passion project for me, the entire concept of Moneyball Webinars. I've been working on this idea for over a year, so you folks are the first ones that get to hear about it. And yeah, I think you'll be surprised. We've actually built some pretty cool resources around this concept of Moneyball Webinars. Now, I'll explain the name to you in just a moment. But first, let me talk to you about the entire webinar space. You guys know I've got a lot of opinions on what's happening in the world of webinars. And one of the things that drives me a little bit crazy is how webinars are being positioned in general in the social marketing space. I mean, we've all heard that webinars are the best tool for online sales and community building, and nothing else converts like webinars. And I am in 100% agreement with that. I think that webinars are far and away the most effective tool for building your community, for doing online sales, for conversion, for training, for a huge variety of different applications. I mean, the magic of being able to deliver a webinar to a community, which is pretty much got all of the different aspects of a television broadcast that we do for free, relatively for free. And is just mind-blowing, especially somebody like me that comes from a broadcast background. But here is my issue, the expectations. We constantly see people telling us that we can expect a multi-six-figure income with 20 to 60% conversion rates and lifelong wealth, happiness, and all of this kind of stuff based on delivering webinars. That they're a panacea that just are a guarantee of you making a lot of money, especially if you sign up and buy our course. That is something that just drives me a little bit crazy because hold the presses. I'm editing today's webinar. I'm not kidding. And an email comes into my inbox, which is exactly what I'm talking about at this moment. And I just had to find a way to fit it in. So I'm actually jumping into the editing process here to show you that this is the text of an email that I received. Now, take a look here. Just read through this with me to reinforce this idea that people overpromising on what webinars do. Most people create programs, put them up for sale, and hope and pray they'll sell. I gave X person advice to pre-sell a program before creating it. See, this is another thing that some of our webinar teachers and some of our online teachers do is they teach you to do a webinar and to pre-sell a course that you haven't yet built, but only build the course if enough people buy the course. I can't tell you how wrong-headed that is. There is nothing about this email that I agree with. Nothing about it that I agree with. The person, whoever it is, said that he made an offer to join a 5-week program, and he sold 10 spots in 90 minutes at $9,990, made $10,000 in this webinar before creating and delivering the product. Well, even if this is true, I think this is a terrible business practice because we're not talking about whether or not the person's ever developed and delivered a course before, but also this is just overpromising. This is something that it seems to me that the webinar space and the people that are teaching webinars right now are overhyping exactly what can happen. You might recognize this email as, I'm not going to mention the person, but you might recognize who they're from because you might have received this email in your own inbox in the last couple of days. But this is exactly what we're talking about, is that we need to take a practical approach to understanding exactly what the value of webinars is and deliver them in a mature and responsible way to support our business, as opposed to having unreasonable expectations or what I consider to be questionable practices in the delivery of said webinars. Now back to our previously scheduled programming. The bottom line is that I believe that webinars do convert, and they are the best place for many of us to invest our time and energy in building an online community. But they're hard to do properly. They require skill, they require practice, they require patience, they require diligence, and they require building an entire system around them that will guarantee their success. You can't just say, I'm going to do a webinar, start to launch a webinar and do a webinar, and then get a lot of success. And I think sometimes we're sold a bill of goods in this space. So I've broken webinar success down into some pretty simple basic steps. I want to overcome the myth that success is achieved through a format. Now, I'm a huge fan of formats. I love formats. I teach formats in how I teach doing my webinar. I teach you how to develop a webinar format, and that guarantees you a good quality webinar. Format will guarantee you a good quality webinar, but it won't guarantee you a successful webinar for your business objectives. I believe that success for business objectives is achieved through formulas, by creating a formula. And so I have developed Moneyball Webinars, not so much because it's a flawless formula, but it teaches you how to think in a way that is going to lead to success. It teaches you to concentrate on the formulas that will lead to success. And that's where the term Moneyball comes from. So Moneyball Webinars was an outgrowth of me noodling around lots of different ideas, but I was a big fan of the movie Moneyball. And what I loved about that movie was how they looked at the key metrics for success in baseball. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a baseball team. It's a true story of a baseball team that built a very competitive team with a very small payroll, because they looked not at the hero statistics, the ones that the media and the fans loved, the home runs and the slugging percentage, the people that were scoring lots of runs, but they looked at the real metrics that led to successful teams. Things like on-base percentage and these sorts of things, just kind of more subtle, less celebrated statistics. And they built a team around these metrics. And they built a very competitive team. Now, they didn't win a championship, but they came darn close. And they were bang for the buck. They were super effective. And as a matter of fact, almost all professional teams now follow kind of a Moneyball metaphor. They pay attention to different statistics as a result of the success that they had. So that we could do that. We can take that into the webinar space. Now, in the webinar space, we look at, in the online space, we look at lots of things like list size, and we look at a lot of metrics that make a difference for us. And then we look at other metrics that don't necessarily make a difference for us. So we look at, for example, if we look at dottotech, the metrics that I think are really important to me are the size of my email list, not necessarily the number of subscribers that I have on YouTube. Now, the number of subscribers that I have on YouTube is all good. Those are good statistics, but they're not the ones that actually lead to revenue. Not necessarily, not when we're talking about webinars. So, which of the statistics, which of these metrics should we pay attention to as we build our business? And if we take a step back, especially if we've done some webinars, if we've got a little bit of experience, if we take a step back and instead of looking at the vanity statistics, but instead look at the real statistics and the real metrics that lead to success and lead to us making money, which is our goal, at least as far as this narrative is concerned, then we can tweak and spend our energy on the metrics that really make a difference, as opposed to just kind of trying to push the entire rock uphill, but instead trying to figure out exactly what pieces of the rock we need to get to the top of the hill. I hope that makes sense. So I've created this little simple calculator. Now, the calculator will give you a starting point of how much money I think a webinar has the potential of earning based on your numbers. Now, we'll share this with you, and this is actually the beginning of an entire kind of email sequence that will follow up, that will talk to you about some of these different metrics. But the statistics that we look for are, first of all, list size. How many people are on your email list? That's obvious, isn't it? Open rate. What percentage of your emails are opened and read by your community? That's not as obvious a metric, but it's a really important one when we look at the Moneyball scenario. The frequency of email that you send, again, a really important statistic, but probably one that you're not thinking about a lot, because it really ends up reflecting on on all of the other numbers within the equation. And then, of course, the offer price, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how much you can make from a webinar. So in order to do that, we have to know what the product that you're selling is and how much it's worth. So when we go through these different metrics, we discover some really interesting things. Now, I'm going to share the calculator with you, and I'm encouraging you to try the calculator out. But remember, it's just a starting point. It's what it is I interviewed as many of my colleagues as I could that were really delivering webinars. And I said, how much you make? Will you share the numbers with me? And they shared their real statistics of how much money they were making on their webinars. And I incorporated that, and then I built a calculator, a model calculator that takes those numbers and my own experience from delivering many, many revenue-based webinars, and in order to spit out a real expectation on what your webinar can earn. And it's actually quite accurate. I think it's accurate in the early stages of webinar development. Once you develop some real webinar chops and you develop some real skills, you can certainly achieve much higher returns than what I'm talking about. But what I wanted to do with this as well was set reasonable expectations, so people don't feel, when they've done a good webinar, when they've done all the things right, and they see the numbers at the end, because of what's they're being told webinars can generate, I don't want you to feel that feeling of defeat. If you've done a webinar and you've earned $6,000 or $7,000, and all of the numbers really, to me, indicate you should have earned that, you should be proud of that webinar instead of disappointed that you didn't hit 5 digits the way that XYZ webinar prognosticator tells you should have. So you can use this calculator as a starting point to get a realistic expectation. And don't get depressed when the numbers aren't as high as what they're promising. We're building our businesses on webinars. There's many of us that are doing it, and the chances are you can too. But take it with a pragmatic approach and grow. And what we're going to be talking about as far as the rest of the rest of this webinar today is going to give you some skills to improve those numbers as we go along. So, it all starts with list size, and list size is so important. I wake up every morning thinking how I'm going to increase my size of my email list. That is ever so important. And we talk about it in a lot of our different social marketing, different webinars and courses that we do. Size rocks, but it is not everything. You need a relevant list. You need a list of people that are interested in the topic you're in. So doing things like segmenting your list can be a really important activity, especially as your list gets a little bit larger, and especially if you're like somebody like us who has people that are interested in different silos of information. Some people that are with us are interested in webinars, other people are interested in video, other people are interested in Evernote. Making sure that I'm not sending and trying to promote a webinar course to people that are really only interested in productivity and Evernote, that's really important to me. And the numbers all skew as a result. So if I'm incorporating those people in the list size, in the catchment area, then I'm not going to be able to accurately predict what my revenue is going to be. Or I see a falsely low revenue number, because I've got all those people in. And if I concentrate on building my list on people who are relevantly interested in webinars, it's going to perform better, and my overall metrics are going to improve. So it's important for us not to just look at a raw number of list size as the real relevant number, but instead the people who are actually interested in what it is you're going to offer. So list size is something that we constantly concentrate on, constantly try and grow. But when we talk about Moneyball skills, when we talk about looking at the metrics that make a difference, open rate all of a sudden jumps up and becomes ever so important, because it's an indicator of engagement, of trust, but it's also a massive indicator of how much return you can get on your webinar investment. When I start playing with the Moneyball calculators and I look at somebody that has, say, a 10,000 person list and they have a 20% open rate on their email, well, then that's going to indicate that we're going to have maybe 2,000 people opening the email. And from that, we can determine how many people are going to be in the webinar and what the webinar is going to earn. But if we can increase that open rate by just 5%, we actually increase the overall value of the webinar by 5%. And this is mind-blowing, because think about it for a moment. Now, this isn't just by clickbaiting people to open the email, don't get me wrong. But if you make your emails that much more relevant over time, so that more of your community is opening the email, that's going to lead to more trust, more engagement, more people into your webinar, and more profit. So you think about the time and the energy you spend growing your list and adding 100 people to your list. That's something, but you've already got 100 people on the list that maybe by making your content more relevant, you can get them to open the email. And if you get that 100 people opening the email, that's going to have the same result as getting new people on the list, because now they're going to get into the funnel and ultimately end up in the webinar and ultimately purchase if they're on that path. So this is a Moneyball stat. Concentrating on your open rate. What can you do in your email list to increase your engagement and increase your open rate? So important. Another Moneyball statistic is frequency, and it's not necessarily the way you think. More is not better. So if you think about how often you send out an email, how often you send out email, you want to measure that against the open rate and against the engagement. And if you're sending too frequently and people aren't opening because your content isn't relevant enough, you may end up hurting your overall open rate. Your overall margin ends up dropping as a result. So determining what the appropriate frequency of email going out to your community is becomes a really important metric. And this is something that we can't advise you on, other than you pay close attention to it and you can then make a determination. And finally, the offer price. So of course, we need to know that in order to figure out exactly what we're going to earn based on the unit sales, the number of units that we sell, if we are indeed selling a product in our webinar. So all of these factors, and there's way more subtle factors, but the goal of Moneyball webinars, from my perspective, was for us to take a step back and look really practically at where success comes from when we deliver webinars. And more importantly, not just where the success comes from, but what activities are going to be the most beneficial in us growing and building our webinar venture. So here, let me show you the calculator. It's right here. So this is the site we built, moneyballwebinars.com, built the site, and I'm going to be using this as a list builder and leading into our online course for quite some time. This is going to be a project that's going to be going on for a while, and the back end of the calculator will be changing. This is an evolution. This is a project as opposed to a product. So this is something that I'm constantly going to be tweaking. I'll be constantly importing and putting new statistics as I get more information from other webinars I've done or from other people who share their webinar information with me. So you can go through the content, but it's basically what we just talked about as far as all of the different aspects of a webinar. So let's just put in some metrics just so you can see, because you're probably wondering. And I would love if you took the calculator and also tested out based on your own experience of doing webinars. So let's say you've got a list of 5,000 people and your open rate is 20%, right? Now your frequency is 4 times per month, that we're going to say right off the top, and the price of your product is $197, which is a really typical price that a lot of people charge kind of for one of their first or for a digital product. Let's calculate and see how much money, based on my experience, you can expect to earn with those metrics. You ready? You're probably going to be disappointed. Maybe you're not. But here it is. You should expect about 400 people. If you got 5,000 people and you got a 20% open rate, based on my experience, you should expect about 400 people to register for the webinar itself. You can expect 100 people will show up live during your webinar. Lots of different factors on how many people are going to show up at the webinar live. That's another real good Moneyball statistic for increasing your performance, is making sure that people actually show up live to the webinar. But on average, you're going to earn somewhere between a low of $1,000 and a high of $4,000 with that webinar. Now, does that disappoint you? I'm curious. Does it jive with your experience? But that is based on my research and my personal experience, what you can expect. This isn't the $100,000 that you're going to hear from others. This is really practical. You can do this, and you can be sure that you're going to earn somewhere in this range. And if you exceed this range, you're doing well. You're already starting to move it. Like if I was to do this webinar with that number, with the experience that we've got, I would exceed these expectations. But this is a reasonable place to start. Now, if you click here, once you've done it, then you fill in, share your information with us, because this is a list builder. Then what we'll do is we'll walk through a lot of the different touch points and the metrics that we went through. As well, we'll incorporate you in an email sequence. And I've devised the email sequence depending on the list size of people. So it's lots of small pieces of advice and things to think about in order to grow your webinar. This is all free. It's all set up. Of course, we're using this as a list builder and as a lead-in to our Winning at Webinars course, where we teach you how to more effectively produce a webinar. But this is a really good place to start. This is a really good exercise for you to go through to set reasonable expectations on the entire webinar space. There are so many, I talked about it at the beginning, but there are so many different courses out there that you can sign up for, and so many different programs that you can sign up for that are going to share with you these home run stories of people making, 6 digits, 5 digits in their very first webinar, between $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of sales in their first webinar. Well, my experience, and I've done a lot of webinars, and I've got a lot of friends that have done a lot of webinars, is that that's unrealistic expectations to set. Having said that, webinars are such a great opportunity. They are such a terrific tool for getting our business to where we want our business to be, that I wouldn't want people to not do them because the realistic numbers don't resonate and don't make sense for you. These numbers aren't going to be something that you're going to do a dance a jig to, but they're numbers that you can build a business on, because we know from looking at all of those touch points that you can grow the email list. We know that you can concentrate on improving your open rate. We know that you can concentrate on getting more people showing up to the webinar. We can do all those things. So just doing a thing like, if we go back to the calculator we just looked at, 5,000 people, let's say we don't improve the number of people we have at all, and we don't even improve our open rate. But instead of getting 100 people showing up at the webinar, we get 200 people to show up. We get a much higher show up rate. Well, then all of a sudden our numbers double, right? We go from $1,800 to suddenly $7,000 or $8,000 in revenue. And all of a sudden our webinar looks a lot better. What can we do to improve the number of people that show up at our webinar? Those are the things that we concentrate on if we're playing Moneyball webinars. Does that make sense? I hope so. So I think it's time for us to jump in and start taking questions. And also I want to make sure that I have time to fill you in with what's happening with Winning at Webinars as well. So I want to make sure that I have... All right. So that's back. I love the fact that Christine ran the calculator. She's done webinars, and she said it came out accurate. I can't tell you how many times I worked on this calculator with all of the social media marketers that I know, all of the people that you go to see at Social Media Marketing World. Reached out to a bunch of them that kind of share the same ethos as we have here at dottotech, and invited them to share their numbers with me. And it was that takes a lot of trust, and I really appreciate all the ones that did it. But all of the content creators that I really respect, the content marketers that I really respect and have time for, most of them shared their numbers with me from their webinars. We imported all of that information in when we built the calculator. And I think one of the reasons that they all really trusted it was just based on the numbers from my webinars in the initial version of the calculator, I let them put their own numbers in and share it, and run the calculator before they shared their numbers with me. And they kept coming back to me saying, that's what I'm making on my webinar, Steve. Those are the numbers. And Christine just verified that again. And I think some people will find that disappointing and discouraging because of all the promises out there. Personally, I find it liberating to know that if I put X amount of effort in to have the confidence that I'm going to earn Y out of it, that's something that I'm all over, and I'm willing to do the hard work and to do all the things to make it happen. So that is that's where that sits. So here's what we're going to do right now. A note to anybody that has to jump out, or if there has been a few feed issues today. If you have to drop out, we will be sending out a replay of the webinar. I'll probably be sending it out at some time today because of what my workload is tomorrow. So we'll be sending a replay out as soon as we can. And that'll be available to you for 48 hours. And after that, of course, it's going to be archived for our patrons at Patreon. But now what I'm going to do is we're going to get the questions. We got them all marked here. If you do have a question, as you type in the question, just tap on the little button on the right-hand side of the text that you create. That demarks it as a question, makes it much easier for me to identify the questions as I go through. And I'll go through and I'll answer each question before we're done today. But first, I do have some sales to make because we're launching our Winning at Webinars course again. It's starting up quite soon. So I want to share with you, if you are at the point that you're ready to invest in yourself and developing webinars and delivering webinars, and you like the style of webinars and you like what you see from us here at dottotech, you like the experience that we've had with all of our webinar Wednesdays, etc., then this course might be the course for you. So let me just share with you quickly what we're offering, what's going to happen with the course, when it starts, the money, the cost, and the special offer that we have right now as well. So it's called Winning at Webinars. This will be the second full cohort going through, and it's a course on the philosophy that I have on delivering webinars. Now you have to understand that my philosophy on webinars comes from a broadcast and television background. So I don't look at webinars as a call the way that others might. I look at them as a show. And so this course primarily is about delivering excellent content, making sure the webinar itself is well delivered. We will certainly talk about the marketing of webinars and the sales of webinars and how you turn it into a sales tool as a part of it, but that's not my strength. That's not our strength. Our strength is the technical aspects of choosing the right platform, making sure that you configure your webinar properly, making sure that you create all of the assets correctly. The actual live delivery, I'll be coaching you a lot on presentation and performance, that sort of stuff. That's what the strength of this particular course is. There's lots of courses that will teach you about the sales side and how to create a format for selling That's all fine and good, and those are good things. But our course is going to turn you into a great broadcaster as far as delivering webinars. So the course is broken down into 6 modules, and each module is delivered live, but then of course recorded, and we create supporting content around it. So you can take the course live, or you can take it asynchronously. You can take it in your own time. It doesn't really matter, and I don't think it's more valuable one way or the other, because we have mechanisms in place for you to ask questions and to get feedback and all of those sorts of things. But the first course is, of course, the first module is just getting started, choosing the best platform, and actually configuring your webinar environment, making sure that you can deliver a webinar from an environment. And actually, we've really upped our game ourselves with that, with how I've developed and designed the new studio. So all of the new information of how I built out this studio and the new house for delivering webinars is going to be incorporated in module 1. Number 2 is crafting your content. Actually, the different types of webinars, depending if you have a sales webinar, a training webinar, a marketing webinar, what type of webinar you're doing, and crafting your content for your community, for your audience, and for your product. And for your own personal delivery style. So we go through that. The third is so important, and it's something that I don't think anybody else pays too much attention to in this space, and that's running the webinar. You'll find lots of people that will teach you about what to say in your webinars and how to manipulate your audience into doing your will, buying your product. I'm going to teach you how to run a webinar and how to train your team to act like a broadcast crew does, so that the singers sing and the dancers dance. The singers being you presenting the webinar content. You shouldn't be worried about the technical back end. You shouldn't be worried about any of that stuff. You should be concentrating 100% of your energy on performing and presenting the content to your community. And then, so we have a producer. We teach you how to have a producer and how to, in what their tasks are and what their job is to make the webinar run efficiently and effectively, just like we would with a live radio or television show. Then we get into the marketing aspects, where we talk about making sure people attend your webinar, setting up processes to get people on board. I think you'd be surprised at some of the things that we've learned about delivering webinars, such as lead time, how early you promote your webinar, how aggressively you promote it as it comes online, and a lot of what we talk about in the Moneyball webinar aspect comes into the marketing of your webinar, which is getting bums in the seats. Not that you're bums, getting people attending the webinar, showing up, and not just showing up, but getting the right people showing up to your webinar. Then what do you do with this asset afterwards? How do you take a webinar and leverage it into other aspects? I think one of the most creative things we've done here at dottotech is how we've taken these weekly webinars and we've turned them into the heart of our business community and the heart of our growth by turning them into a webinar archive of assets that supports us financially through Patreon. But that's just one model. If you understand the value of your content, and as you deliver the content, as you deliver the webinar, you've crafted it in such a way that you can repurpose it, and you have a goal in place for what you do with the content to leverage it once the live webinar has been performed, then you're way ahead of the game. And you're going to do that. And that's like a from cradle to grave thing. You start thinking about that before you develop the webinar content. And then, of course, you execute it once you've finished the webinar. And we've got lots of ideas in that space that we'll teach you and share with you. And the last module is really important. That's the performance module. And that's where I coach you on being on camera and the different techniques. Some people are happy to be on camera. Some people don't want to be on camera. They just want to have the slides up and just want their voice there. Some people like to have a script. Some people don't. But all of these, we're going to work with you, advising you on ways to get the best out of yourself, to create an avatar for you, a performance avatar that's going to really work in the webinars. Of course, the magic of webinars is they're a fast track for engagement because people get to hear your voice and see you, and there's all of the interactive nature. But the downside is if you are uncomfortable, if you are insecure, well, that's going to work against you. So we have to get you to the point that you're comfortable performing. And that's a big part of what we do in winning at webinars. It's a huge part of winning at webinars. So we'll turn you into mini Steves. You'll be just as good or better than me in your webinar performance. So that's the rundown. We will also be incorporating a bonus module. We're going to be talking about the difference between webinars and live streaming and how webinars interact and interface and go into the live streaming space, because that's relatively new with Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and how it's all integrating with webinars and the kind of the crossing over between those two areas. So we'll be incorporating a bonus module in that as well. We just haven't set a date for that. So the rest of this page here, which we'll share with you, is kind of talking about how wonderful I am, and then the pricing. So the course is $4.99 for our course. We have a couple of other options. One is the course, but also including live coaching, where I'll actually work through one of your webinars with you. I'll audit one of your webinars. I'll give you direct feedback on your webinar. So it's 3 sessions, one-on-one, one before, and then the live webinar itself, and then an audit when I debrief you on the webinar itself that you've delivered, where you can really get into the intimate details of what's worked and what didn't work. And this is best for you to do after you've gone through the main course content, is to do it kind of just at the tail end of that. So we have that available as well. Plus we also have, and although you can't actually sign up for it, you have to indicate interest, a webinar mastermind. I have to make sure that I have the right group together, that I'm going to be able to move in the right direction all at the same time. But if you're interested in joining a mastermind, there's a form to fill out, and that'll be $500 a month. And we will then have a cohort that goes through as a mastermind. And that's going to be really nice if we can put it together, because people will support each other in it, go to each other's webinars, and we can kind of move the entire group through at the same time. So there's some exciting possibilities there, but I have to make sure we have the right group together and enough people. I mean, we have to have at least 6 or 7 people in the group to make it really worthwhile for all of us. That's the normal pricing. But this is our early bird offer, so there's $100 off on the first 2. So $3.99 instead of $4.99, or $8.99 for the coaching session. Those are available, and you can click on the links on the page to gain access to them if you are interested in any of these courses. Of course, we have a money-back guarantee on all of our courses, and anybody who's taken one of our courses in the past, they are grandfathered in to the new version, so you will gain access to this automatically, and we'll be sending out an email to anybody that's already registered and has taken our Winning at Webinar course before. I think that covers pretty much everything about the course. I encourage you, take a look. April, can we drop the link in, or let's push the, we have the offer there. Let's push the offer in. Let me just grab that. I can do that. I know where it is. I think I know where it is. I'm pretty sure I know where it is. There it is. And let me push that into the chat. There we go. And there you have it. So you can click there, you can sign up. And so that special pricing is going to be available until the course goes live, until next week, until a week and a half or so. And then once the course is live, it goes to full price. And that's the way that we do things here at dottotech. So that is it. Let me jump in to chat and into look in the chat and start answering your questions. I think that's everything. Yes. Good. All right. Okay. Excuse the graphic. What's the matter with the graphic? Oh, geez, that was me. Sorry, it's not online video made easy. I had so many moving parts this morning as I was getting everything ready. Oh, hanging head in shame. I checked everything. And I didn't check that. Oh, well. Thanks for pointing it out, April. All right, Steve, let's get into let me jump over here into the chat in the Q&A, and let's have a look through the Q&A. Okay, so I'm starting from the bottom. I'm hoping that's the way it goes. So Melanie says, Steve, do you think that presenting a course and then canceling it because you didn't get enough enrollments, good, could result in a bad first impression for those who did sign up and were excited about participating? Yes, I think that just sends a bad message in so many different ways, because a big part of what we do when we start selling and we present an opportunity to do something is the social proof. Is the fact that people are going to come and sign up if they believe that others have done so. So if you pull back because there wasn't enough interest, I think that just is going to be a hole that's really going to be difficult for you to be taken seriously again. They might appreciate your content, they might still stay a part of your community, but actually turn to the point where they purchase something from you, I think that's a real uphill struggle at that point there. And Susie follows on with that question. I knew there would be some pushback on this. Can I expand on it's bad to promote a webinar before creating content? Susie said she's done lots of webinars and online training courses, and I want to test this course upsell from a $5 book purchase. Now here, I won't read through the rest of your post here, Susie, because it makes total sense. Susie is an experienced course creator. She's done many courses. She knows what it takes to create the course and sell the course and present the course. I don't have any issue with you determining at that point as a mature online marketer that you want to pre-sell a course that isn't yet done to make sure to do it. But I believe you also probably have the confidence that it's going to go ahead no matter what, and you're going to deliver it no matter what. So you've got the outline done, which you said, and you also know what it takes to deliver a course. What happens in these online courses where people are teaching you that technique is they're saying, even if you've never delivered a course anymore, this is what you do. You go and you create an online, you create an outline, you sell it, and then you take that money and use that money to build the course. And if you've never done it before, you don't know what your capacity is. You don't know what the quality is going to be like. You don't know what issues you're going to face. I think that's wrong-headed right out of the gate. I'm very concerned that that's the sort of thing that we teach, because I don't know how people recover from that mistake if they've done it wrong. And if they haven't done it wrong, I think that they will often end up delivering lesser quality content because they don't realize what's involved once. But it's a course I deliver live. So in this particular case, I am really selling the course before it's all there. But I've got all the assets. I know what it takes to deliver. I've delivered it multiple times, and even the same content several times before. So I feel a lot more safe doing that. I don't like teaching that as an entry point into the online course space with using webinars. So that's the issue that I have, Susie, and not with you, because you've also articulated a very reasonable ladder where you tell people, you might even be telling people, I'm thinking about doing this course and asking for their interest. That's a whole different story as well. So Troy, should I do a webinar as a product consultant manager? I don't know. If you can find a narrative, if you can find a story if you can find something to teach in your webinars. Now, typically speaking, when we teach our webinar course, we're not teaching people to just create webinars for sales. We're teaching people to create webinars for building their community, for teaching, for a variety of different things, one of which could be selling to your community. But if you are teaching something, if you're training, if you're edifying your community in some ways, I don't think there's a better tool than webinars, to be perfectly honest. A Rose says, question, how do you differentiate a webinar from a course? Course meaning a combination of webinars, forum, direct support, downloadable materials, etc. Exactly. Webinars, for the most part, for me, are one-offs, or they can be a series, but they can be the course content, but they don't have to be. Webinars is when we're using online video, when we're using these tools. Let me just reconnect here because I noticed my video is frozen. When we use our computer, internet, and a webinar platform to deliver. It's a broadcast. This is a broadcast metaphor. So this is replacing radio or podcast or some other form, but it's a synchronous delivery of content, real-time delivery of content. That's the way that I position webinars. Now they can be sold as a course, or they can be delivered for free. They can be pure entertainment. They can be delivered in a variety of different ways. So that's how I differentiate between them. All right, Susie, do you have any training on how to go about segmenting the list? I think we've got a little bit of training on CRMs in our webinar archives, but we haven't actually taught people about segmenting a list. That's something that April might be able to reach out to you and let you know a little bit more about. We're constantly working on doing that more effectively, but to be honest, it's something that you are better off doing early on in the process than later on. It's a harder retrofit, but you can certainly do it off the top. But you can certainly do it with a series of emails, but it's painful once you're too far down the line, if that makes sense. It would be a good topic though. April, let's think about that. I'm intimidated by it because it's something that we constantly struggle with. All right, Larry, wouldn't it be important if a metric of click-throughs to webinars to sign up? Wouldn't it be more important of a metric click-throughs to webinar sign up? I'm not too sure exactly what Larry's talking about, but in the Moneyball concept, every step of the way, you're measuring and looking and trying to figure out what it is that makes a difference. So I was trying to articulate today some of the real baseline things. Like if you can tick up from the number of people registered, if you can increase by 5% the number of people that show up, that has a profound impact on the bottom line. And when you run the calculator, if you change that number, if you change the show up rate, all of a sudden you see the dollar difference and you see what a profound impact that has. So that makes you then think about how you do the registration for your webinar, the time frame. You know, whether a shorter time frame, only registering people 3 days before the webinar as opposed to 5 days before the webinar increases the show up rate dramatically. Those sorts of things become metrics that you pay attention to. That's the kind of the science that goes into Moneyball webinars. Peggy, if I read an email in my email program but don't click on any of the links, will it show up as to the senders having been read it? For the most part, yes. You can block that depending on how you've got your own email client set up, but for the most part, we see it if you open an email, yes. Marge, who did the graphics for the Moneyball program site? They are great. They are great, are they not? Liz Azian, who is our designer, did that. And Liz did a really good, for those of you who are patrons of dottotech, Liz did a wonderful webinar with us talking about the design of our website, where she went through all of the different things that we went through. And we went through the same things when we designed the Moneyball site. So if you take a look at at designing a website webinar that we did about a month and a half ago with Liz, you can hear from her. And she also has a mail list that you can opt in so you can learn from Liz. So Liz Azian, she's on her way to Malaysia for a family vacation right now. Peggy, do you think it's important to encourage people to register for your webinar just so they can watch the recording? How important it is for them to participate in the live webinar? Great question. If you design your webinar from the beginning to be replay friendly, yes, you don't care when they register because you'd rather have them register than not. If you've designed it to be a live event, you might choose not to have a replay available at all if you think it's really important to have the live engagement. So that's going to be something in your own design and with your own business objectives. So I can't say it's better or worse doing it one way or the other, but it is something that you take into consideration in the composition of your webinar. Vic says, my problem is what to talk about in the webinar and how to find content to talk about in webinars. Well, that's certainly, I'm not sure that's something that we can help you too much with as far as, you have to find your own narrative and what stories support your business. But, doing a little more research into content marketing is going to help you understand a lot more about the type of content that you can be sharing. I think it's something we all struggle with. Sometimes I'm dry. I look at upcoming webinars. Doing one every week can be a little bit intimidating at times. But if you listen to your community, they'll tell you what you're interested in, and that's a good place to start. I plan to take both the webinar course and Thinkific. Which shall I take first? You can take them both at pretty much the same time, John, but the webinar course starts April 5th. So you have time to do the Thinkific course, which is just a mini course. It only takes a few hours to go through. So do that one first and then strap on your boots. And be with us April 5th when we start the new version of Winning at Webinars. And welcome aboard. Looking forward to having you on board. Will, the chat stream is valuable. Each time I try scrolling through, I lose connection and all the chat history. This is an issue with Webinar Jam or my device setup. It's a Webinar Jam issue, Will, and it is one of the challenges that we have. I agree, the chat stream is so valuable. That's one of the reasons, talking about the strategy of webinars, that I record the webinars the way I do. So I'm actually recording the entire feed here live as we go, so that when I put the YouTube replay up, the chat history is there. Now, it's not interactive, so you can scroll through it the way you'd like, but you can still see all of the chat and all of the social proof. But I consider personally one of the most valuable assets in a webinar to be the chat. That energy that happens, I think, is just terrific. Just what's happening right now with the Q&A and that sort of stuff is so very valuable. All right. So that was Will. Sorry, I said it was Troy. That was Will that had that question. Troy, also, you could set up video conference and help your business. Video conferencing is a style of webinars. And certainly, if you participated last week with us in Webinar Palooza, where we looked at all the different webinar platforms, which, by the way, the Webinar Palooza module is going to be released probably tomorrow. We're going to be able to go in and see all the replays and see some of the supporting content for it. There are webinar tools that really support conferencing better than webinar delivery of the sort that we did here. So a tool like Zoom becomes a really valuable asset at that point. Okay. Do you help choose the tech equipment, Christine? Absolutely. The first module is really about the technical setup. That's what we talk about through the entire first module. Yep. Do you have any ideas on businesses who tax cheat Any idea on the numbers of businesses with tax cheat? I have no idea on the numbers of businesses. That's a bit of a non sequitur, George. I don't know. Are there any good alternatives for a webinar host if you produce the webinar in a location with a poor internet connection? Okay, so if you've got poor internet connection, Peggy, there's a couple things. One is this hybrid style of webinars that we do where you upload the bulk of your content and stream it live and then go into chat becomes a really viable option because your connection isn't at issue there. It's how YouTube is streaming through. So you'll notice that the video in the middle played really well, even when the rest of the webinar may have some issues. So that would be one technique. Another technique I would go through is not streaming video live, but instead having an entire, just a talking head with slideshows. That would be another option that I would do at that particular point. And it's unfortunate, but that's, you're going to have to deal with the cards that you're dealt at that point. Christine, is there an option to upgrade, start without support and add it on if needed? Yeah, Christine, of course. Yeah, we could, not of course. Yes, we would be happy to do that. Susie, at the moment I had one purchase, I knew I'd be creating it. Yeah, so Susie says as soon as she sold one, she knew she'd be creating. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter if you don't sell any. You're not disappointing anybody at that point, are you? So that's, again, a very positive attitude towards it. As I said, I just don't like it being taught as an introduction for people who have no experience doing it. You obviously know what you're doing there. Marge, I've seen some respected marketers do webinars that they explain upfront that they are intended to uncover the need for training, and as long as they're transparent, I think it's fine. Agreed, Marge. That's agreed. And Susie actually mentioned that as well. So if you are upfront saying, this is a measure to add, this is a thing to gauge your interest in us delivering a course in this area, that's an entirely different prospect as well. Again, experienced people doing it aren't the ones that are buying the courses to learn how to do it. They're teaching the courses. So that's where they have that issue. Susie, are you using any evergreen webinars? I'm anal about honesty and transparency. Susie, I could give you a big hug right now. So I make it clear that I'm not on the webinar, but they can email questions to me using the chat. I rage about this exact same thing. I hate the fact that people try and create faux webinars, F-A-U-X, faux webinars. And I think that they're disingenuous, and that if you try and make people think that you're live when in fact you're not, you're lying to them. And what kind of relationship is that? Wait, is that to start a relationship with a potential customer? So I definitely am against that. However, evergreen webinars, the ability for people to watch, because I'm in the Pacific Coast. I'm in Vancouver. When we deliver our webinars live, people in Australia, it's a terrible time for them. It's dinner time in England. People can't necessarily participate when we're live. So pre-recording or recording the webinar and allowing them to watch it in an evergreen format is, I think, valuable. There are some schools of thought that you should make them watch it back in real time. So in other words, they have to watch it, like if this webinar is now an hour or 58 minutes long, that they can't watch it faster. What I do philosophically is we record it, I upload it to YouTube so you can go through in double speed, because I think you don't necessarily need the interaction. I like the idea that you can email a question, fully agree with that, but I want people to be able to watch it as quickly as possible as well. So you can watch these webinars in double speed on YouTube with no trouble and get all of the content. So that's what we do. And there's a variety of different ways to package that, but I like the idea of evergreen webinars. Transparency is 100% important, and I would prefer if you could create mechanisms to allow people to consume the information in as little time as possible, increasing what I call information density. More time, more information in less time. So I'm 100% on board with that. Does the replay include the chat window? Yes, it will. Yes, it will. A Rose says, Steve, so that mean your calculator and winning at webinars membership just as relevant for course creators and standalone webinar creators? Well, if you are going to deliver webinars as a part of a course, then our Winning at Webinars course is valuable. If you're just pre-recording videos and loading them into a learning management system, then probably our course on online video made easy is more valuable at that point there, because we just teach you more techniques and we concentrate more on the video production side. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other as far as that is concerned. But if you are going to be doing the marketing of your course using webinars, then our webinar course is valuable. So 2 out of the 3, yes, we'll say. Tom, have nonprofits used webinars for communicating to community and funding? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's because webinars can be used in any way that you're going to be broadcasting and sharing information. So nonprofits would be just fine using them, and I expect that a lot do. Yes. Rich, can you expand on replay, no replay strategy that are being taught out there? Okay, some people think that their best chance, scarcity is your asset. There's a real scarcity is seen as a business mechanism to promote action. So if you say, if you don't show up live, you don't get to see this, means that people are going to show up live and they're going to arrive with greater intent. There is value there, but I'm not sure that it's legitimate value, because for most of us, what's the harm of recording it? It takes us a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra effort to upload it for the convenience of our customers. So if you're in that hard selling cycle where you want to use these different emotional triggers that induce the sale or induce the action, then forcing people to be there live is valuable. Doesn't really jive with my ethos, so it's not the route that we go, but it works, or people wouldn't be doing it. It's just lots of things work that I choose not to do. All right, that was it. That was the last question from Rich, I think. Yes. And we're up to an hour, and I think we're done. That is awesome. Folks that stuck around, thanks. There's about 100 of you left in the room right now. Thank you so much. We'll be sending you out a replay link for this. Those of you who sign up for winning a webinar or for the Moneyball webinars, you'll be getting a little email sequence that we've built around that is designed to kind of nurture you and to let you know a little bit more about webinars. And you'll all be getting a few extra emails letting you know about our Winning at Webinar course. If you happen to be interested in signing up for that, we look forward to that coming down the pipe. No webinar Wednesday next week. You'll get an email for the following week to join us. Looking forward to seeing you then. With that, I got to thank you all so much for the time that you spent. April, thanks for monitoring everything in the control room there. Right on time, an hour. This is as good as it gets. Till next time, have fun storming the castle.